Colt was cheating on me the entire time. Colt was exactly who everybody said he was. Like, you have erectile dysfunction, you can't walk, you're homeless, you're jobless, and you're still cheating on me in my house. Like, the level of disrespect is insane. Like, why wasn't I enough for him? Like, why wasn't he happy? I showed him unconditional love, and he showed me unconditional.
Courtney sat there with Colt's phone in her hand, and one message changed everything. One moment she felt calm after a long night out. The next moment her stomach dropped. A message popped up on the screen from another woman, and the words did not sound friendly. They sounded personal. Way too personal. And in that quiet second, a relationship built on trust started to crack. Courtney did not expect anything like this. She supported Colt through rough patches. She stood beside him when life felt messy. From the outside, the story looked simple. A partner giving support while the other tried to rebuild his life. But phones hold receipts, and sometimes those receipts tell a story nobody wants to read. She scrolled once, then again. The messages kept going. Not short replies, not casual conversation, long chats filled with attention, compliments, and plans that did not include Courtney at all. The kind of messages people send when they think nobody will ever see them. And right there, the entire relationship started to look different. The first message she saw raised one problem. The second message raised 10 more. How long had this been happening? Weeks. Months. Longer. Every new line on the screen made the past feel less honest, and the strange part sits right in the center of this mess. Colt depended on Courtney for support. She stood by him while he figured life out, yet the phone in her hand showed a man giving romantic energy somewhere else. And once you see something like that, your brain starts replaying every moment from the past. Suddenly, small things from earlier weeks start making sense. The late replies, the distracted mood, the moments when Colt seemed somewhere else even while sitting in the same room. Courtney kept scrolling, hoping the next message would clear things up. Instead, the situation grew worse. Some messages looked flirtatious, others sounded intimate. A few hinted at plans to meet. And that is the moment confusion turns into a cold, heavy realization. Courtney paused and stared at the screen, because one thought now refused to leave her mind. If these messages existed tonight, then they existed yesterday too, and the day before. Which means this was not one mistake. This looked like a pattern. The bigger question started forming in her mind. Why would someone accept loyalty, help, and emotional support from a partner while secretly building connections somewhere else? And the deeper she looked into that phone, the more the truth started pushing its way to the surface. Courtney felt hurt, but also disbelief. A part of her still hoped the messages meant something else. Maybe she misunderstood, maybe context changed everything. Maybe there was some explanation waiting on the next screen. But every swipe removed another piece of that hope. Now a new question began taking over the moment. Did Colt believe nobody would ever check his phone? Did he think the story would stay hidden forever? Because once the first secret shows up, the rest of the secrets rarely stay quiet. Courtney locked the screen slowly and took a breath. The room felt different now, heavy, silent. She had seen enough to know something was wrong, but she had not yet seen the full picture, and part of her feared what the next few minutes might reveal. The phone still held answers, and those answers were about to change everything. Before this moment with the phone, the relationship looked simple on the surface. Viewers watched the beginning during the events tied to the 90-day hunt for love storyline. Courtney appeared open-hearted from the start. She welcomed Colt into her space and treated him with patience. She offered support when his life looked unstable. She showed empathy when he spoke about past struggles. On camera, she looked like someone who wanted to help a partner stand back up. Colt arrived carrying more baggage than most people expected. His history on the show already came with complicated relationships and emotional tension. Many viewers remembered those earlier chapters. Some fans even joked online that Colt entered the story with a full suitcase of drama already packed. And the strange part is that Courtney still gave him a chance. She allowed him into her life when many others would have walked away. She helped him settle in. She gave him space to figure things out. From the outside, the dynamic started forming quickly. One partner providing stability, the other partner receiving support. At first, the moments looked small. Colt seemed quiet and uncertain. Courtney played the role of the steady partner. She cooked, she planned, she encouraged him to rebuild confidence. The scenes carried a calm energy, but people watching closely noticed tiny warning signs early on. Friends raised polite concerns during conversations. Some of them questioned whether Colt brought the same effort back into the relationship. Those comments did not explode into big fights at the time. They floated in the background like soft alarms nobody wanted to hear. And viewers sitting at home felt those alarms long before tonight. There were moments when Colt appeared distracted during serious talks. There were scenes where Courtney handled most of the emotional weight. A few viewers even joked online that the relationship looked like a support program rather than a balanced partnership. The show never confirmed anything suspicious during those early episodes. Still, tension existed under the surface. When someone gives non-stop energy into a relationship, people expect effort in return. That expectation felt shaky at times. Courtney continued showing loyalty anyway. She defended Colt when others doubted him. She believed patience would strengthen the bond. Many fans respected that kindness. Some fans worried that kindness might turn into vulnerability. And tonight, while Courtney sits there remembering those early days, every small moment starts replaying inside her head. The quiet doubts from friends, the strange pauses during conversations, the nights when Colt seemed distant. Those scenes once looked harmless. Now they feel like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. The big question now hangs in the air. Were those early warning signs simple growing pains, or did they point toward something much darker hiding behind the relationship from the start? The thought did not appear out of nowhere. Earlier that night, Courtney sat with friends after drinks, and the mood felt casual at first. Then, the conversation shifted. Someone mentioned a strange feeling about Colt. Another friend brought up small things they noticed during recent weeks: delayed replies, sudden mood shifts, moments when Colt looked nervous for no clear reason. Courtney tried brushing those comments away. She defended him like she always did. She reminded everyone that relationships carry rough moments. Yet one sentence from a friend refused to leave her mind during the drive home. If something feels off, check the phone. And that one suggestion kept echoing louder the closer she got home. The house looked quiet when she walked inside. Lights dim, silence everywhere. Colt had already fallen asleep in the bedroom. His phone rested beside him on the nightstand like any normal night. A simple object sitting there. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious at first glance. Still, Courtney stood there for a moment without moving. Her brain started arguing with itself. One side said trust your partner. The other side remembered the uneasiness from earlier conversations. She stepped closer to the bed. Slowly, carefully. Colt remained asleep, his breathing steady. The phone still lay within reach, and now the distance between suspicion and truth looked as small as one swipe across a screen. Her hand hovered over the phone. A few seconds passed, long seconds. Checking a partner's phone crosses a line for many people. Courtney understood that. Yet another thought pushed through her hesitation. If nothing hides inside the phone, the doubt disappears forever. She picked it up. The screen lit up instantly. The lock screen appeared. One more barrier. One more chance to stop. Courtney paused again, heart racing. Because once the phone unlocks, the relationship never returns to the same place again. Either the doubt dies, or the truth changes everything. She entered the code. The phone opened, and the first notification appeared before she even searched for anything. A message thread sat near the top of the screen, a woman's name Courtney did not recognize. The preview line looked friendly at first glance, but the tone felt personal, way too familiar for someone outside the relationship. Courtney tapped the conversation, the screen filled with messages, compliments, emojis, late-night conversations stretching across multiple days, words that sounded intimate, words that sounded like two people building something behind closed doors. Her chest tightened while scrolling through the thread. Then, another message appeared further down the chat. Plans mentioned casually. A suggestion about meeting up soon. The kind of message people send when a connection already feels established. And suddenly, the phone started revealing a story nobody prepared Courtney to see tonight. She kept scrolling through the conversation, hoping the next message would clear things up. Instead, the tone grew more affectionate, more personal, more difficult to explain away. Now another unsettling thought pushed forward. If one conversation looked like this, how many more threads waited deeper inside the phone? Courtney held the device tighter in her hand. Because the investigation had only begun, and the truth already looked worse than she imagined. Courtney kept scrolling through the conversation, and the tone inside those messages left little room for confusion. The words sounded affectionate, not polite, not distant, not friendly in a casual way. Affection filled the chat. Compliments about missing each other. Late-night exchanges filled with attention. A rhythm of conversation between two people who spoke often. The deeper she read, the more the messages crossed normal relationship boundaries. Plans appeared between the lines, hints about spending time together, mentions of future moments that did not include Courtney at all. And right there, the difference between suspicion and proof became impossible to ignore. This was not a random exchange from one evening. The timeline stretched back across days. Then weeks. The pattern looked steady. Replies came quickly. Messages arrived late at night, the kind of timing people use when they believe nobody else will see. Courtney paused on one message that felt harder than the rest, a line about meeting soon. The message looked casual on the surface, but the meaning underneath felt clear. Two people planning a moment outside the relationship. The shock sat heavy in her chest. For a few seconds, she did not move. She simply stared at the screen while the reality settled in. And the painful part came from remembering everything she had given to this relationship. Courtney offered Colt a safe place when his life looked unstable. She opened her home. She showed patience while he worked through emotional struggles. She stood beside him during recovery moments when many partners might have walked away. Support like that builds trust. When one partner carries most of the emotional weight, loyalty becomes the quiet expectation holding everything together. But the phone in Courtney's hand told a different story. While she handled the difficult parts of life with him, Colt spent energy somewhere else. Attention flowed toward another woman through texts that sounded romantic. This contrast created the deepest cut. Not only betrayal, also imbalance. One partner giving daily support, the other partner building secret connections behind the scenes, and people in relationships miss warning signs when strong feelings sit in the way. Courtney believed loyalty existed because she offered loyalty herself. That belief shapes how people see their partner. When someone gives honesty, the brain assumes honesty returns in equal measure. Yet the messages suggested Colt lived a separate emotional life on the side. And that reality started reshaping how the past few months looked in her memory. The late nights, the moments when he looked distracted, the strange pauses during conversations. Those details once looked harmless. Now they lined up with the messages on the screen. Courtney locked the phone for a moment and pressed her hand against her forehead. Her heart still raced, but another emotion slowly pushed through the shock. Anger. Not loud anger yet. Not explosive. The quiet kind that grows when betrayal stops feeling confusing and starts feeling clear. And the moment anger replaces disbelief, the entire situation shifts toward confrontation. Courtney sat there thinking about the support she gave Colt during his lowest moments. The housing, the daily care, the patience while he rebuilt stability. All of that effort stood on one side of the scale. On the other side sat the messages she just read. The balance looked painfully uneven, and now one final thought refused to leave her mind. Colt still slept peacefully a few feet away, completely unaware that the truth had already reached Courtney's hands. Courtney did not rush into a long argument. The shock still sat heavy in her chest, but the decision formed quickly once the anger settled in. The messages spoke clearly enough. She woke Colt and told him what she had seen. No screaming at first, no dramatic speech, just a firm message. The relationship ended tonight, and he needed to leave the house. Colt looked stunned in those first moments, sleep still in his eyes. Confusion mixed with the realization that the phone had exposed everything. He tried speaking, tried offering an explanation before the conversation even started. Words about feeling ashamed. Words about making mistakes. And in situations like this, the first explanation often arrives before the full truth does. Courtney listened for a moment, but the decision did not change. Trust had collapsed too quickly to repair in a single conversation. She pointed toward the door and asked him to pack what he needed. Some belongings ended up sitting outside the house not long after. The scene carried a strange silence. Not the loud chaos people expect from dramatic breakups, just the quiet sound of someone gathering their things while the weight of consequences settles in. Colt stepped outside with bags in hand. An Uber arrived soon after. He climbed into the car and left for a nearby hotel, carrying the same suitcase that once arrived with hopes of a fresh start. And that short ride to the hotel marked the beginning of a different chapter in this story. Once outside the house, Colt began speaking about what happened. His tone carried embarrassment. He admitted the situation looked bad, yet his explanation started forming around feelings of insecurity. He spoke about not feeling like he measured up. He mentioned pressure and personal struggles during the relationship. Those words raise an uncomfortable question. Feeling insecure explains emotions, but insecurity does not send romantic messages to another woman. Actions still require choices. The pattern here looks familiar in many public relationship scandals. When exposure happens, the next phase begins quickly. Public explanation. Justification. Attempts to explain how the situation reached this point, and the real question now sits right in the center of Colt's response. Does he feel genuine regret about the betrayal itself, or does the regret focus more on getting caught? Another question hangs close behind it. Will Colt accept full responsibility for the choices revealed inside those messages? Or will the explanation slowly shift toward outside pressures and misunderstandings? The answers to those questions will shape what happens next, and the way Colt handles this moment will reveal more about his intentions than any text message ever could. Colt's interviews arrived shortly after he checked into the hotel. On camera, he spoke softly, almost like he was confessing to himself first. He said he felt insecure. He said he worried that Courtney's care was more about pity than love. He admitted that dependence weighed on him. And for some viewers, this may sound familiar. Feeling pressure in a relationship can twist emotions and lead to defensive behavior. The narrator pauses to unpack the psychology without excusing it. Some people respond to vulnerability by pushing others away. Some react to dependence with anxiety. Some start searching for validation elsewhere. It's a pattern seen more often than we like to admit. But the key point lands hard. Insecurities do not erase responsibility. Colt's reasoning offers context, but never wipes the slate clean. Acknowledging fear and vulnerability is one thing. Acting on it by betraying someone who trusted you completely is another. The harm caused cannot be undone by explanation alone. And here's where the tension builds for viewers. Understanding his feelings does not soften the blow for Courtney. The commentary observes that his explanations have a dual effect. On one hand, they invite empathy. He sounds human, someone wrestling with his flaws, someone trapped in his own emotional cycles. On the other, they highlight choices made while ignoring the impact on the partner. Courtney's support, patience, and daily care were met with secret messages and emotional betrayal. The narration emphasizes how often this pattern repeats in relationships. Feeling inadequate or dependent can make people seek affirmation outside the bond. Yet, accountability remains non-negotiable. One partner's emotional struggle cannot justify crossing boundaries, and this duality keeps viewers engaged because you can see the human side and the heartbreak side at once. The segment also raises subtle questions about responsibility versus empathy. Can viewers separate understanding why someone acted a certain way from condoning the action itself? The answer becomes central as the story continues. It frames the next developments, where reactions and consequences collide. By showing Colt's emotional reasoning, the audience gains insight into human behavior while the damage done remains undeniable. Courtney's hurt, the breach of trust, and the betrayal all remain at the forefront. The narrative balances empathy with accountability, keeping tension high. And as the story moves forward, every action Colt takes, or fails to take, will carry the weight of both his insecurities and the consequences of his choices. Courtney sat across from her parents, her hands shaking slightly. Her mom's eyes filled with disbelief, her dad's jaw tight with anger. They didn't just see a partner hurt their daughter, they saw their home, their trust, and their generosity exploited. Every favor, every ounce of patience they extended to Colt now felt like it had been used against them. And this is where the ripple effect hits hardest. Betrayal rarely stays contained between two people. The narrator notes how families often carry the fallout, silently absorbing shock, disappointment, and frustration. In this case, the heartbreak extended beyond Courtney. Parents questioned how they had missed the signs, how they had trusted someone who had been dishonest in plain sight. Their disappointment was a mix of concern for Courtney and disbelief at Colt's disregard for everyone's care. Friends and social circles began reacting too. Social media posts, comments, and whispers turned the private betrayal into a public conversation. The narrator highlights how actions that break trust rarely remain unseen. When someone depends on multiple people for support and fails to respect it, consequences expand. Reputation and relationships beyond the immediate couple become collateral damage. And for viewers, this raises a tough question. When betrayal occurs, how far should accountability reach? The tone softens slightly, giving weight to reflection. It's not just about shaming someone who did wrong, it's about understanding how interconnected trust is. Every act of dishonesty, every secret kept, touches more than the person it directly concerns. Courtney's heartbreak was mirrored by her parents' frustration, their sense of violated trust, and the quiet anger simmering in friends who had warned her early on. By showing this extended emotional impact, the story reminds viewers that the stakes are bigger than a single relationship. The betrayal felt heavier because it wasn't contained. It had consequences on every level. Courtney's support had been genuine, but so was everyone else's trust, and Colt's actions showed a disregard that hit hard. And as the tension builds toward the final confrontation, the audience feels the weight of these collective emotions, setting the stage for the reckoning that has to come next. Courtney waited at the edge of her driveway, the bag of Colt's belongings at her side. The air felt thick, heavy with months of unspoken frustration and recent revelations. When Colt arrived, he stepped out of the Uber slowly, his expression a mix of apprehension and awkwardness. The narrator notes how every step toward her felt like walking through invisible tension. Colt tried to start with small talk, phrases meant to soften the moment. Courtney didn't waver. She kept her voice steady, controlled, and direct. Every word carried the weight of everything that had happened: the betrayal, the lies, the nights she had held hope where none was deserved. The narrator points out how rare it is to see someone confront pain so clearly while maintaining composure. As she returned his things, Courtney explained how the situation made her feel, focusing on his choices, not his identity. She highlighted the emotional labor she had invested, the trust she had extended, and how those efforts had been met with deceit. The commentary underscores her growth, how she transformed shock and hurt into clarity and boundary setting. Colt attempted to justify his actions, his tone wavering between apology and explanation. The narrator carefully analyzes his words, showing that while he seemed aware of some wrongs, the impact of his behavior had already caused irreversible damage. Courtney listened but didn't engage in excuses. She made it clear that accountability meant acknowledging harm, not offering rationalizations. And for the audience, this moment answers the central question. Standing firm in truth creates power and closure that no betrayal can steal. The emotional peak arrives as Courtney steps back, signaling the conversation is over. Colt leaves, his presence shrinking as he walks away, while Courtney remains, grounded and visibly stronger. The narrator emphasizes that her composure wasn't about suppressing emotion, it was about claiming agency, reclaiming respect, and choosing her own peace. This final interaction transforms the story from one of heartbreak into one of personal victory. The audience witnesses how confronting wrongdoing, setting boundaries, and demanding respect can close a painful chapter while keeping dignity intact. The narrator leaves viewers reflecting on the difference between holding on to anger and asserting self-worth, a lesson embedded in every measured word Courtney speaks. Looking back, the story of Courtney and Colt fits a pattern that repeats in many relationships. The narrator points out how behavior often speaks louder than words. In Colt's case, reliance on others, secret betrayals, and shifting responsibility show a cycle that doesn't break without consequences. These patterns were visible early, subtle at first, but unmistakable in hindsight. Courtney's loyalty was unwavering, but the commentary highlights that loyalty alone cannot protect against someone else's repeated choices. The narrator emphasizes that trusting a partner doesn't mean excusing disrespect. Viewers are reminded that relationships thrive when both people give and receive support, not when one side carries the weight while the other takes advantage. Warning signs are often small at first: hidden messages, unexplained absences, defensiveness, but they grow when unaddressed. The narrator encourages the audience to recognize these patterns before they escalate. It's not about assuming the worst in people, but about being aware of behaviors that can become harmful. And for those watching, this story shows that awareness, boundaries, and accountability are the real protections against heartbreak. The reflection also examines emotional dependency. Some individuals seek validation outside the relationship when they feel insecure, but the narrator stresses that this does not justify deception. Understanding this difference helps viewers see the fine line between vulnerability and harmful action. Courtney's story reminds us that love should never come at the cost of self-respect, and that ending a relationship is sometimes the healthiest choice when trust is broken. By looking at the larger patterns, the narrator leaves the audience with a takeaway. Relationships are built on mutual loyalty, transparency, and respect. When those are absent, even the strongest kindness cannot prevent harm. Courtney's experience becomes both a cautionary tale and a guide for recognizing the signs before investing too deeply. Courtney walks away from the chaos with her head held high. The narrator emphasizes that the hardest moments often teach the clearest lessons. Betrayal leaves pain, but it also brings insight. She now understands the difference between loyalty and enabling, love and being used. Every viewer can feel the weight lifted as she steps forward with clarity and resolve. The commentary points out how facing the truth, no matter how painful, gives control back to the person who was hurt. Courtney's anger is real, her disappointment justified, but the focus is on her growth. She refuses to let deception define her story. The narrator notes that walking away is not defeat, it is self-preservation, wisdom, and strength in action. As viewers, we can't help but admire her courage and question how often we ignore red flags in our own lives. Even as the relationship ends, the narrative hints at the ripple effects. Social media reacts, fans debate motives, and the franchise shows more layers of drama waiting to unfold. The audience senses the tension hasn't fully vanished. This is only one chapter. The narrator closes by teasing upcoming confrontations and unexpected alliances within the show, keeping curiosity alive. Ultimately, the story leaves viewers with a blend of closure and anticipation. Courtney's journey highlights the importance of boundaries, self-respect, and recognizing harmful patterns early. The narrator wraps the story by reminding the audience that even in heartbreak there is clarity, and even in anger there is growth. The door closes on this betrayal, but the franchise continues to promise new drama and lessons for those willing to watch closely.